Can't make it to the Two Bears 5K in Tampa? Join us virtually. Run or walk the 5K anywhere in the U.S. Signups are open now at twobears5k.com. Don't miss out. Lace up, show up, and take home some fantastic race day gear.
100%. Cheers.
Welcome to another episode of Two Bears, One Cave. Sad news about my regular co-host. He had an arm amputated. And so while he's recovering, we have the king of ring sting sitting in for him. It's the great Sean Evans, everybody.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. I hope Bert gets a cool prosthetic.
I do. I'd like to see something titanium.
Yeah, it's going to add a whole new dynamic to his live show. Thanks for being here. You're in town because South by Southwest is, and you're gonna. Are you gonna speak?
Yeah, they have. It's a totally full schedule. It's been a really busy year, but yeah, just an itinerary that's packed for like the next couple days. Where
God, it sounds awful.
They'll shove me into a room, take a bunch of pictures, do this interview, sit on this panel,
do you
a
like
bunch
that?
of stuff. I'm leaning into this year, so like. I was at the Oscars last weekend. We did like Sundance like the weekend before that. Like the whole calendar has filled up, and I'm just kind of leaning into it right now.
Every time I arrive somewhere and they go, "This is your calendar," my objective is I go, "How can we reduce this?" That's what I lead with. How can we do less instead of what you've proposed?
I think that's something that comes with growth, But right now, this is my first time kind of going through all
this
of
is the fun.
So I'm plinko balling through it,
Yeah,
and then
cool.
I'll review it afterwards and figure out what we need to trim.
And you'll go, "Never do this to me again." That'll be the subject line. Never again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm learning all those things.
Well, you've been, everybody who knows from watching anything on YouTube, everybody knows Hot Ones, and the trajectory of this thing is incredible. You're like that's the prototype. That's the dream for people is they go, "I have an idea. I'd like to do this, this bit kind of online and maybe it'll turn into something." And then the A++ example is Hot Ones. That's got to feel pretty amazing.
Yeah, it does. I never take for granted this unique magic carpet ride that I've been on. And I'll also say that a lot of it came by accident. Like we had this idea, but I don't think we realized the degree to which, hot sauce is a disruptive element, all the hours spent like really committing to the interview, the way that it would kind of make this "what's it like to have a beer with this person" show that people have been trying to invent for a really long time. So
everybody's doing knockoffs of it. Right?
I think people and sometimes I kind of miss even just this. Like this is fine. You don't have to add some sort of high concept to it. I remember watching, maybe it was before a Monday Night Football game, and it was Sims doing an interview with Patrick Mahomes, and they're doing this interview, and then they mixed into it like playing catch with each other.
Right.
And I remember that being just a distracting element.
Yeah.
But it comes from a place of people sitting around in a boardroom being like, well, we can't just do an interview. We have to introduce
something
some
else,
sort of high concept to it, which maybe it's gone a little too far.
I didn't realize too the genius of Hot Ones until after doing it, which is that like on its surface, it can appear that like, oh, this is some gimmick, like eat hot wings, right? But the thing that happens is that when you have something like hot sauce, it disrupts your natural guard.
Yeah.
So as these questions progress and you're uncomfortable, you're speaking in a way that you would not normally speak. And that's really the magic. You're like, because like you could do it with alcohol, but then you have like, it's different, right? You have your inhibitions are kind of like, it's making you, it's going to affect you for a longer period, right? You're going to be drunk eventually. But this is like this temporary thing that throws off your equilibrium and your judgment. All of a sudden, it's like truth serum. It's truth serum is what it is.
Yeah, and I think it also just distracts you from the formality of an interview.
Yeah.
Like it's so bizarre, just the concept in general, that you'll sit down oftentimes with someone that you're meeting for the first time. You'll have to create this rhythm, this energy, this rapport, and this sense of trust with someone.
Uh-huh.
And then you're doing it in this ridiculous context of having all these cameras pointed at you and it being a show.
Yeah.
That just in its architecture should probably brick 90% of the time. Like interviews should have like a 90% fail rate when you just look at how they're designed. But I think just the act of sharing a meal with somebody, that's something that can kind of create that
Yeah.
trust. And then the hot sauce, and then just being disoriented by the whole thing. I think you just kind of forget that you're on an interview show. Plus the way that we shoot, it's like deep in the room, the black curtains, all of that stuff, you can kind of disappear into a void.
There's all these little things.
It's
that
all the
kinda-
little things that add up.
that are very detailed. I feel like too, like we, you know, like I've watched a lot of them, and I've been on the show, and you're like, you start to appreciate that you kind of leave there, and you're like, what the fuck just happened in there? How did they know this stuff? And like what did I just say? Do I have to text them and say, please cut that out? Like all those things. But I feel like also you're so good at interviewing that I think your next, you know, like at some point you're going to stop doing it.
Right.
You're our next Charlie Rose.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was the man, and then he like peed on someone. I
Yeah,
forget what it
something,
was.
yeah.
And then they stopped letting him do the show.
interviews,
But
yeah.
we need the guy who gives the really good in-depth interview.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the compliment. Well, half compliment. you know?
It's a real compliment.
Yeah.
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 Shout out to Charlie Rose. I'm still a fan.
Yeah, I think you know, interviewing is just, it's something that I don't think anyone's naturally good at in the beginning, and I think you only get better by the reps and all the hours that you have to put in. So that's always what I've just tried to stay committed to, is the next interview, trying to make it a little bit better than the next one, and just keep building those things. And
What do you advise for interview? Like if somebody was like, how do you give a good interview? Like what's your take on it?
I think be naturally curious and enthusiastic when you're doing the kind of interview that I'm doing. If you're talking to a movie star that has a movie coming out, I think it's the best thing. The way that I do it is I just try to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. So if we're interviewing a musician, I'll listen to all the music, make a playlist that'll become the soundtrack to my life for a week. If they have a whole filmography, you know, end your night with like a little double feature and
Yeah.
really soak in their output as an artist, because I think in a lot of ways that can communicate who they are as a person just as much as anything that you would read in a profile or whatever. And
Yeah.
then obviously you should do that other work and really dive into all the stuff. And then you have so many resources on YouTube, so many interviews, so many things that you can reference in order to get a better understanding of the person that you're talking to. But I think overall, people that begin, they'll probably just make a list of questions and just try to fill up that sheet and
Yes.
think like that's kind of enough or whatever.
That's the when you're doing press, they always like, hey, you want to do an interview with this college kid? And you're like, sure. And then the college kid is like, what made you like comedy? And you're like, I watched it. And
Right.
they're like, when did you start? And then they're like, I have 4 more. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like they're filling their quota. kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. They just want to fill up the sheet and be like,
Yeah.
well, that's I've done my job, and now I'll
Yeah.
ask the questions and kind of rely on the other person to elevate this whole thing.
Yeah. So your whole thing is essentially don't be lazy. That's basically,
Yeah, and that's
'cause
hard
you guys
to
put
do
in a lot
sometimes.
It's effort.
Yeah,
You have to
yeah.
put effort. You guys put time and effort into it. I think it's obvious. Like when you do the show and when you watch the show, you're like, oh, they didn't just like go tell us about your movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that that's also important because you're coming in to eat these scorching hot chicken wings. I think it's only right that we meet someone halfway. It's kind of just a respect thing, but also, and maybe you can speak to this, but if you're sitting down with somebody who's just like has their list or whatever, you know, the value of an interview is going to depend a lot on the generosity of the person that you're interviewing.
Yeah.
So I think that if you meet them halfway, if you show them, especially early on, that it's going to be a different kind of interview, then they'll relax their shoulders, and then
Yeah.
that can be just as disarming as the wings and the sauce. So I think it's that combination of things, and that really can make a good interview. But I think it's also just reps and time and hours doing it that makes you better.
It's clear that you guys do a better job. It's so funny because it's non-traditional media. And then you go, this is like, right, you know, it's online
Yeah.
versus like a ABC show or something. And you're like, yeah, but you guys did a way better interview. Like you guys did a way better interview. And then it gets probably, even though you guys have, it's wildly popular and you have so many views, I'm sure there's a percentage of the public that like, I don't watch this chicken wing shit. Like,
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
they're like, I want to watch the traditional thing where I learn nothing about this person. Yeah.
I think so too. But I think that's really changing a lot because, you know, obviously there's the eyeball situation, you know, like so many eyeballs now on these internet shows, and then the production is flattened so much. You know, when you're looking at something on YouTube, it looks just as good as it does on those network shows. And then when you think about where a lot of these shows, I'll include ours, live-in culture, the kinds of guests they have in, the numbers that they put up. I think that kind of separating those two things is it's just a matter of time before that disappears, because I think all of that is flattened so much.
I think you're right. It's widely reported that the show has been sold, but you still get to operate it. So now that you're legit wealthy, what are the bitches like, dude?
I don't know. It's kind of dry out here right now.
Damn.
Yeah. There's a big responsibility now with what we have going on, because we didn't plug into anything. Like we basically plugged into Severance.
Yeah.
So now I feel like I've had such a busy year. Like January was the busiest month of my career so far until February hit.
Because of the lead up to selling it, or no?
I think now it's just there's the responsibility of now it's on us. You know what I mean? Like we were able to extract that Jenga piece and get our baby, and now it just feels like it all falls on our shoulders to make it successful. So I've just been selling out with everything that I do this year. And then I think that also like coincides with the profile rising, and then a lot of these other pulls in various directions, including like the reason I'm here today, you know, in Austin, you know? So it's just been the studio, the airport, the hotel, back to the airport, to the studio, hotel, like nonstop.
Sean, as a fellow bomber jacket enthusiast, how do you go about picking your outfits for the episodes?
I appreciate you saying that, because I recognize your bomber game and
Thank
your
you.
polo game.
Thank you.
And I think that we're both similar that way.
Yeah.
So I have
both have beautiful bald heads, too.
and yeah, actually.
Or shaved
Yeah.
heads, sorry.
Next Charlie Rose. Maybe I'm trying to be the next Tom Segura.
Fuck. Looks good. But do you put thought into it, right? You always
a little
look
bit
sharp, dude.
Yeah, well, I'm a uniform dresser. Like I think it's like the same kind of vibe, but in just slightly different shades
So
of
do
like
you-
blue, black, and whatever color.
So you have the
this
same
is.
problem as me, too, where like the other day I got clothes shipped to the house, and I showed my wife, I was like, hey, what do you think of this? And she was like looking down, and she goes, it's going to be the same thing you always get. I go, what? She goes, you buy the same shit over and over. And I was like, what the fuck, man?
Same with me, but it's just because I'm not shopping, but like once I find a shape that I like, or a style that I like,
Then you're like, I'll just get more of those.
exactly, and they have it in kind of different materials.
Yeah.
Like,
And then you're like,
know,
I have 40 of the same t-shirt.
exactly. So that's exactly what's going on right now.
Okay,
with me.
good. I'm glad there's
we're on the
someone
same
else.
page.
Shit, yeah.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Allbirds or Skims, or sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, a brilliant marketing plan, and an often overlooked secret actually is the business behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions, that business has been and always will be Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Their checkout is so good, and the not so secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going up. Think about it. When was the last time you had a cart filled with stuff and all of a sudden you're like, it's just too much? That's what Shopify dodges. You get those shopping carts that are filled, turn those consumers into buyers. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify, like my business. Well, dude, we just launched a sweatshirt and sold it through the roof. And I'm telling you, the sweatshirt's good, but without Shopify, man, I don't know if we'd be doing the business we're doing today. So upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bears, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/bears to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/bears.
I don't know about you, but I like keeping my money where I can see it. Unfortunately, traditional big wireless carriers also seem to like keeping my money too. After years of overpaying for wireless, I finally got fed up. Crazy high wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks that actually cost more in the long run, and switched to Mint Mobile. Everyone here at YMH is a huge, huge fan. It's changed everybody's bills, and it's also changed their happiness. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at $15 a month. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/bears. That's mintmobile.com/bears. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 gigabyte plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Okay, here's my version. Here's my Hot Ones pitch that we're going to do here. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, you take your thumb up and you rub it along the crease of your scrotum and you take a whiff and then I'll ask you a question and we'll see if it disorients you.
Okay.
Ready? Okay.
It should.
Okay.
All right, I'll start.
Okay. So, now,
Whoa.
Sean, a Super Bowl commercial is a big deal in and of itself. But when you add Matthew McConaughey to the mix, it goes from a cool gig to life event. When you got the call to shoot with him, what was your immediate reaction?
I thought it was amazing, and then it was even better shooting with him because you see his process, on the sidelines, which I'm like, wow, like the way that he's approaching this Uber Eats commercial, like talking to the director, like in real time, workshopping alt lines. I think the original line that I had in it was like something that was like, these. I can't remember what the original line was, but he was the one that changed on the spot to be like, these wings deserve a team, and then he's talking to the director and he's like, and then, what if I'm like, I look over to Bill and I'm like, you got any good team names for Buffalo, Bill? He's like doing that. He's like, you like that? I think the director is just like, yeah, that sounds good to me. He's like, yeah. Sean, you like that? I'm like, whatever you want, Matthew. He's like, that's the one. And then even when he was sitting down, he'd like look to the director and he'd go, now are we NFL execs wheeling and dealing? Or are we common folk eating wings in a Buffalo diner? Because he was like trying to get the motivation for his character, and then I think the reason that commercial works so well is because that's how he'll attack every scene that he does, and then he
gives
crushes
a
it
shit.
in that commercial.
He really cares.
Really gives a shit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of inspiring to me because in those situations, the only responsibility I'll feel is like, I'll be like, okay, just don't fuck up this line.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
hit my mark, don't fuck up this line. But then
Which
see
is like
the way that he approaches it.
95% of us would be like, yeah, just don't fuck this up. Or like, and then be like, did I do that okay? And then they're like, yeah, that's fine. Like,
but to see his just kind of creative process and enthusiasm in that moment, I thought was just amazing.
He was the best. When he came here, like the fact that he was like, because we asked, these certain questions about like how he prepares, and you see how much he's not just a guy that's just like, what are the lines? Let me just phone it in.
No,
he
not
really, really cares, and I think that's why he elevates things.
That's why he is who he is, and then why that commercial is good.
All right, now stick your pinky in your asshole and take a whiff, and let's see. All right.
Whoa.
Woo! As someone who's constantly on the move, flying for interviews, brand deals, and the Hot Ones empire, you've probably seen every possible version of in-flight madness. What are the air travel pet peeves that drive you absolutely insane? Are we talking bare feet on the bulkhead, people clapping when the plane lands, or something even more heinous?
I think, part of the problem is everybody who works at airports is so burned out, and you can kind of tell when you're going through. Like the other day I was, going through a security line, and I'm like, just asked the TSA guy, I was like, do laptops come out? And he like didn't even really look at me, and he like looked over my shoulder and he goes, laptops stay in the bag. It's not that complicated, like that. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, dude, it is that fucking complicated. It changes airport to airport. Even in this airport, it changes lane to lane. Like it is that complicated. So, but it's just kind of that over and over again.
Because then you go, how many times he's saying that because he's been asked that.
I understand where he's coming from,
of course,
but he's got to
understand your position too, of course.
Exactly. So that's a problem. I like to sleep on flights, so pilots that get super chatty and are like telling you that you're flying over the Grand Canyon and are going through like humidity of your and wind speed of your destination when you land, and they're really filling you in. That can kind of stop. Also, too, they'll pipe up and talk to you about deals that you can get if you sign up for the United credit card and stuff like that. That's
we got a great deal for you guys, 35% APR.
Yeah, and they're just talking while I'm trying to sleep on the plane. That's kind of insane to me.
Yes.
So,
dude, as a food guy, because you're somebody we associate with food.
Yeah.
It is kind of crazy to be in an enclosed space and people just bring all this food, sometimes food from home that opens up, and then you're like, what the fuck is that? So I got a bag of eggs, and you're like,
That's yeah. It's just
You couldn't have eaten that at the gate, man.
You're exposed to we're all animals, and you're really exposed to it when you're at the airport, especially just being treated like cattle herded onto these planes. And you know what? Like I flew from like New York to Austin today,
Yeah.
and it was like one of those planes that's like a Greyhound bus with wings,
Sure.
So I'm like, even if you get like a first class ticket, it's just like this. But I'm like, isn't that a long enough flight to get the pop down?
Oh yeah,
seats.
And like, how
where's
long,
the cutoff for that?
You see how long some of these planes have been in operation, or because you fly first on one airline and you're like, "That's nice, right?" And then you get on the next one and there's no screen.
Yeah,
it
right.
doesn't lean back really, and you're like, "There's not," and they're like, "Yeah, this thing's been here since like '91," and you're like, "That's a fuck. It's time. It's time, dude.
Yeah.
You gotta take this one out of commission."
Yeah.
When I was in New Zealand last year, and I was flying back here, I remember they pulled my bag out of security, and the guy, I had the spray deodorant.
Oh yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And the guy goes, "Can't have this," and I go, "I can't have the deodorant," and he was like, "No, it's too big," and I go, "I flew with it here," and he goes, "And where'd you fly from? Was it another country?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "This is another country," and I go, "Brilliant." He goes, "What was that?" I go, "Brilliant."
Oh, and the other thing too, the pat downs at TSA,
Yeah.
a little much, I think. Like I had one today where
Aggressive.
they're like, aggressive, and they're like, "Oh, you just got to check your stomach," and I was like, that was a little lower than my stomach, dude.
Yeah,
in front of everybody.
And the
here.
back of the hand. I've
Yeah,
had
yeah,
so
back of the hand,
many
yeah.
back of hands against my nuts. Where I'm like, at least, I don't know.
To an audience of like 80 witnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What is that?" You're like, "That's my fucking beanbag, dude." Oh, what about this? Is one I'm curious about.
Sure.
You guys have had huge A-list celebrities on your show. It's pretty wild. How about after show DMs? Have those gotten?
Oh, the DMs off the top of my head, I'm sure there's been a bunch of them, but like, as you know, I think like when you go through the hot ones gauntlet, you kind of either become friends for life, like you and me, or this person never wants to see me again. It's
Does
one
that
or
happen?
the other. Yeah. Like there's no middle ground, but like one of my favorite moments is when we shot with Dave Grohl. He brought in a bottle of Crown Royal, and he made me go shot for shot as we went wing for wing. It was like this big bonding experience. I remember after the shoot, we're out back in the alley. I don't even smoke cigarettes. I was just chain smoking with Dave Grohl, because he's like, "You want a cigarette?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah, for sure,
exactly.
man.
So
Yeah.
we're just sitting back there
You
chatting.
got any heroin?
Yeah,
sure.
like let's party. And then he goes, "Hey, I've got a premiere for my movie tomorrow. Like, you got to stick around. I was supposed to get on a plane and go back." And I was like, I kind of got to stay. So I called my team. I'm like, "Is there any way that I can just stay in LA, go to Dave's thing?" I'm trying to be best friends with Dave Grohl right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said yes?
Yeah, they said yes. They made it work. So I stayed, went to the premiere, and then afterwards they had this like friends and family Foo Fighters show. So I went and like saw Foo Fighters in like kind of like an intimate club, which is like so cool.
Okay.
But in the middle of the show, Dave goes, "So last night," or he was like, "So yesterday, I got to do one of my favorite shows of all time. And at 3:00 this morning, I woke up and shit my fucking brains out." So this next song is dedicated to Sean Evans. He's in the audience. It's like a movie like spotlight on me while I'm just
What?
standing there in the audience. And then he covered Shame. And then in the chorus, he'd be like, "Shame." And they go, "Shame on you, Sean." And by the end of the song, like the whole crowd was going, "Shame on you,
Dude.
Sean. Shame on you, Sean." So
This is the best story ever. I mean, that's out of a movie.
Yeah.
It feels like a movie.
yeah, it was awesome.
So that's
my
the-
favorite.
Have you had, because I remember there's and I think this is probably a shared experience for a lot of people that go on hot ones.
Mm-hmm.
You have this built-in anxiety, right? When you're like, "Hey, so you have like a producer come, you're like, so like, what's this? What are we doing here?"
Yeah,
and they're
right.
like, "You've seen the show," and you're like, "Yeah, but like." They're escalating. They're like, "Yeah, they'll get progressively hotter," and you're like, "How fucking hot's this gonna be?" And they're like, "Ah, it's pretty hot." And then in your head, you're like, "Fuck, man, like that's gonna be uncomfortable, right?"
Yeah.
And then you're doing it, and then you're like, "Oh, what's the later result of this gonna be? Like, how upset am I gonna fucking shit fire? Am I gonna have
You will.
emergency
Yeah.
diarrhea? Like, so have you had like immediate after taping things where someone's like either notably sick or like they're or they're vocally upset about? Like, have you had people like really be like, "What the fuck"?
Yeah, like I don't know if, because by the end, shockingly, it's usually a very positive shoot experience. Like
Right.
I would imagine that these things would go flying off the rails all the time, you
Yeah.
know, like if you just look at it on paper. But honestly, like 95% of the time, it's like they're happy they did it when they're done, even if there's some turbulence while we're going through the thing. And I'm trying to think if like anybody's had some sort of meltdown or episode afterwards, but at least while the cameras are rolling and while I'm on set, you know, it's kind of like, see you later. Sometimes like, where's the restroom, you know?
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, we clear a path and like to the hallway to the left, you know? But overall, like I haven't been like, the times that I've been cursed out are like mostly in jest on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like for me, I left there. I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, it's gonna be. Thank God there's wet wipes back in the screen room. And then I was like, oh, wasn't that bad? But then of course I was like, yeah, digestion takes a while.
Yeah.
So it's later.
And I do worry because, you know, like a lot of times people are on a press tour or something like that. So they're doing a day of press in New York and then they're hopping on a plane. And I do always, you know, think about that person the next day being like,
Yeah,
I hope
like,
they weren't in that window when that
wonder
hit,
how their
you know?
anus is doing today.
Yeah, I do think about that.
So you were raised in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard people say it like that? By the
No,
way?
that's literally the first time I've ever heard somebody say that.
That's
like that.
so funny to me because I used to like Christina used to be like, "Oh, you're going to Chicago?" And I'd be like, "Why are you saying that?" She's like, "People say that." I go, "No one says that." And then literally one of the times that like a morning she did that, I went to LAX and I'm walking through the United Terminal and a lady is on the mic and she goes, "Flight 2221 to Chicago gate." And I was like, holy shit, somebody is fucking dumb enough to say that. So there are
people out there, yeah.
that are saying that the wrong way. But I do think I was just in Chicago last weekend.
Awesome.
It was fucking amazing. And I always have a good time when I go. And I gave them credit. I go, you're incredible sports fans because you have to deal with whatever you get and you keep dealing with it. But you're a hardcore White Sox guy, right?
Yeah,
You're a
yeah.
South Sider.
Yeah.
So if you were chiseling out Mount Rushmore of White Sox greats,
Yep. Okay.
who's making the cut? And is there any universe where Mark Burrell doesn't have a spot on there?
No, there's none. So Mark Burley.
Is it Burley?
It's Burley.
These guys literally wrote a pronunciation.
They wrote out, they phonetically laid it out.
Yeah. Okay.
Mark Burley.
Hey, Mark.
Definitely on there.
Huge apologies.
Yeah.
Is he dead?
Put him in the Hall of Fame. No, he's alive and kicking.
Hey, Mark Burley. I got it right this time. Okay.
Mark Burley is definitely on there. He's probably my favorite White Sox of all time. And then, well, actually, maybe, no, Frank Thomas is my favorite. But then Mark Burley, Frank Thomas, Big
Frank
Hurt.
Thomas with the fucking T-pills? Yeah, dude.
My dog, yeah.
Hell, dude, I love those. He's like, I fucking take my dick's hard all day. Yeah?
Yeah, so Frank Thomas, Mark Burley, and then
Frank Thomas is a guy I'd like to watch fuck someone. Like, he's one of those guys where you're
That'd
like,
be interesting.
the big hurt,
The big
liver.
hurt,
Yeah.
with the big hammer.
Fuck yeah. You know that thing swings. You ever know? All right, we'll get back to your list. Sorry.
No, please.
No, I met some, I've told this before, but I've met some Major League Baseball players. I had no idea. They were like, oh, you know that throughout MLB on all teams, Dominicans shower separately? Like, and I was like, what?
Interesting.
And I was like, no. And they're like, oh yeah, because they're wild. And they'll do shit like, they're not gay, but they'll come
It's
up
a
and
free
like,
culture.
they're like, they'll just slap their dicks against like each other, and then we're like, nah. So it's like Dominicans, they do their own thing, and then the rest of they're like, I go, that feels like segregation. They're like, well, it kind of is. They're doing their fucking wild shit because they're so sexually free.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and I've had
That's interesting.
the first guy that told me,
multiple people.
and then I told the other guy, and he
And
was
they're
like,
like, oh, yeah?
100%.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. It's
Amazing.
pretty interesting, yeah. And then you go to the Dominican Republic, and you're like, I get it. Yeah.
checks out.
Yeah.
I have two more spots, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna.
But you had Burley, Frank Thomas.
Frank Thomas. I think I'm gonna put Ozzie Guillen on there.
Okay.
And then I have one more spot, which can be kind of tough. And you know what I'm going to give it to? There's this blue collar workman center fielder that I was obsessed with when I was in high school named Aaron Rowand. was maybe not like the biggest name, but he used to just crash into walls, like just over the shoulder, going into the wall full force. But I always just loved the way that he played, and an honorable mention to Scott Pasednik as well.
Wow. Okay, there you have it.
There
It's
you go.
official, and hopefully this will get built pretty soon.
The way things are going,
It is crazy, right? Because, well, first of all, if you have you have the Bears, which is like
it is crazy. I'll roll Bulls. You'll roll White Sox season into Bears season into Bulls season.
Yeah.
And it just goes on and on
And
and
you're like-
on and on and on. And like, it's interesting that, because I think with sports, that's always just going to be this like joy, misery,
Yeah.
slot machine that you're playing all of the time.
It is.
And only one team is going to win a championship. So I think the appetite and enthusiasm that you can build for a team is all about the ride that they take you on that season, right?
1,000%.
So even if you're, a couple games out of the wild card at the All-Star break, like there's still something to follow, something to tune into. And it's been so frustrating for like the last decade and a half. Like all of these seasons are like dead on arrival before they even start. And then there's no real sunlight for how they get out of it. Like I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to be looking towards.
It's so funny because I tell this to people. So because there's people who are like, I don't care about sports, and then there's like kind of people who like casually watch some things. I'm like, here's the thing about it: if you're not emotionally invested to some degree, then you're not getting the thing out of it that is there.
Right.
Like, it's like if you go, I don't care whether they win or lose. It's like, well, then you almost shouldn't you shouldn't watch, right? Like the whole thing about being a sports fan. I mean, obviously some people take this to an extreme and they're way too invested. But the fun of getting behind a team is that you care enough to be miserable when they're down, so that when they are great, the joy is so much greater.
That release, yeah.
You have to have the up and down. And so, a lot of these things are like I always watch college football, and like it is cyclical. Like the teams will be great, and you're like, these guys are great, and then they'll have this downtime, and then the team that wasn't doing so well, and it comes back. But it feels like it usually belongs. It really does belong to like 10 to 12 teams.
Yeah.
That the other ones really can't compete because they can't bring in the recruits to that level. In the pros, though, you're like, man, some of these windows where it's not good is like a lifetime. It's like decades.
And too, I always think about it. I mean, at the end of the day, that business is a nostalgia. That business is a nostalgia and memories business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just been so flat for so long that I wonder. I'm like, are they losing like an entire generation of sports fans there? You know what I mean? Like I think about
Probably.
that sometimes. Where it's
Well,
just,
if you're a kid who was born, like say in Chicago, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, you haven't experienced the highs, really. It's
Nothing,
except for
yeah,
like,
it's just been like, yeah.
a couple moments. Like, well, if you're a Blackhawks fan, you've had
Yeah.
some big time, but like they don't know what the Bulls thing was like.
Right.
They're just like heard about it. They're like, oh, that's cool. And you're like, no, you don't understand. This shit was wild.
Yeah.
Like it was a given. Like, oh, they're gonna dominate.
That's how I actually thought of them when I was a kid. Like the first time I ever saw adults behaving bizarrely was during those Eastern Conference playoff matchups between the Bulls and the Knicks.
Yeah.
That was the first time that I'd see my dad, screaming swear words at the TV,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why is he freaking out? They
Yeah,
win all
what
the
is
time.
this? Yeah.
I'm like, they win all the time. I thought it was like a Harlem Globetrotters thing,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm like, why are all the adults in the room like screaming at the TV and acting like something's at stake here? Like they always win. So even that I didn't even really
The
get to
other
enjoy.
bizarre behavior to watch in an adult is when their sports team is doing well and then they're cocky. And you're like, yeah, it's not you. Like, you didn't do this. But they're like, fuck you guys. Like, this is my shit. And you're like, you have nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
But like, they adopt the arrogance and they're like, it's me.
I would just like a chance to adopt that arrogance.
For, like,
I'd
for a
like to
second?
have no idea what that's even like.
Feels like just on that whole cyclical thing that like the Bears would have to be due at some point.
I mean, I think we'll see what happens this year. They got their coach, and I'm gonna ride it out with Caleb and see what happens. And the NFL is much more of a parity league, which is why it's kind of like bizarre that they haven't been able to crack that code or solve that Rubik's cube, like at least a little bit recently. But
There is a thing about the NFL too that like you just notice over time and you go, how can this be? But it is true. There are organizations that understand winning more. Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
no,
You're
I
like,
think that's
you're
true.
like, that's weird. They all have like money and like they should, but like, you know, you look at like the Steelers and you're like, yeah, this organization understands going after winning.
Yeah.
Like they're doing it decade after decade.
Right. And then there are
different
like
eras.
these handful of like silly teams, you know, like the Jets or like the Bears or the Jaguars or whatever. You know what I mean? Where it's just
Yeah,
like,
I'm from Cincinnati, dude. Yes. Yeah, I understand. That the president of operations pays himself $35 million a year there. For real. Mike Brown's like, that's my salary. You're like, okay. This is not about winning. This is about you being like, this is pretty cool. This is a fucking he runs it like it's a hotel and he's like, yeah, it's full. So
yeah, right,
like,
right. Yeah. They're not going
I
anywhere.
don't care.
Tickets will sell,
Like,
yeah.
I don't give a shit. So for this next question, shit in your pants and then sit there and deal with it. Now, just tell me if it affects your answer.
Yeah, yeah.
You've been known for asking hard-hitting questions, and now it's time for the real question. Do you believe in Sasquatch? Are you full of this is all nonsense, or do you lean more I don't not believe when it comes to them? And if we put you out in the Pacific Northwest with night vision goggles and a GoPro, do you think you'd make a compelling case one way or the other?
Great question. I love this parody of me, by the way.
What are you talking about? I was like, just fucking write some things down for me.
So I'm obsessed with the idea of Sasquatch. I don't believe that like Bigfoot's actually walking around there, but I would love to go out and do one of those hunts. You know, like that sounds fun. There was this Sasquatch show that I used to watch all the time, you know, and it was just kind of a group of crazy guys who, as the show goes on and on and on,
Yeah.
you see them becoming crazier and crazier and crazier over time. And even like the sort of tensions between the group, it goes from this optimistic, we're going to find Sasquatch today, to where like you can actually kind of observe simmering resentments amongst the group there. But I think I like the idea of it. You know, I like the idea of a Loch Ness monster.
Yeah,
you
dude.
know?
'Cause as a kid, that was a really exciting one.
And I never developed out of that thing of like thinking.
So,
these
do you
things
love
could exist.
UFO things and like alien landings?
Well, I'm less compelled by that than like creatures walking amongst us.
So that's
you know?
that's the lane you like the most.
Yeah, like a mythical beast amongst us.
Okay, I have so many alien friends. You know.
Yeah,
Like,
well, that's because that's the thing. I just can't hang with them. You know what I mean? Because people who are into aliens.
One
are
of my friends
super into
is like,
aliens.
check this shit out, and I'm like, what is it? He's like, this is over my fucking house last night, and I'm like, I think those are birds. He's like, that's not a bird. And you're like, he's just like, look at him. Like, that's crazy. You fucking shot that. And you're like, all right, dude. I don't know. Do you believe in the moon landing?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the moon. I'm gonna believe in.
But there was a
moon landing.
hesitation there.
Well, you know, anything's possible, but
Do you think the Earth is round?
Yeah, I believe the Earth is round.
Do you think it rotates around the sun and everything?
Yeah, that all checks out to me.
Okay. Well, you guys, as this continues, please get all the Bryce stuff ready for us, just so I can show him like all
Definitely.
three. I just want to show you.
Yeah.
That there's,
the
that there's-
evidence.
Well, there's other voices out there. A lot of people might not realize this, but the Margaret Herrick Library is kind of like the holy grail for film nerds, and a place where you can find original scripts, production notes, Hollywood history that feels too sacred to be touched. You had the chance to do interviews there leading up to the Oscars. What is the coolest, weirdest, or most unexpected thing you stumbled on? And did you actually end up with like, whoa, like this is actually here?
Yeah, well, they have tons of cool stuff. So yeah, I did a series of interviews over there. The coolest thing that they have, or the coolest thing that I saw at least, they have Quentin Tarantino's handwritten Pulp Fiction script.
That is because he's very famous for being like, you know, no, don't type it up. He's like, would you type up a poem or a song? No, you write it by hand. He writes all of his
Right.
scripts are handwritten, and then he gives it to somebody to type up.
I thumbed through it. It's in a 3-ring binder, just on notebook paper.
But
some
is it
of the
written
characters are
film
like,
style? Like, is it script style?
yeah, it looks like a script.
So it's like exterior.
yeah,
like-
and even sort of even in the way that he's writing, it's like in the center of the page, like kind of like a script
Really?
would be. Yeah.
is it legible?
Yeah, you can. It was cool to see his handwriting, and like all the dialogue is almost like exactly the same. But it was interesting to see that some of the characters' names were different, you know, going through. But that was the coolest thing that I saw. But they have tons of cool stuff there. It was kind of an amazing thing to just go through the archives. Another
Was it
awesome
fun to
thing-
see handwritten N-words not from a friend?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. You're like, oh wow, yeah.
yeah.
Usually this is in a note from a buddy, but this is cool. This is Hollywood lore. Yeah.
yeah. History right
Oh, here's
here.
another one.
And
And here's
another one. Another
Yes,
one. Almost
yes.
every page. And then, but another cool thing that I saw, is they have, just these pages of like casting notes, so you can see like all these people that were auditioning for thing. And then like sometimes there'll be like kind of mean notes next to it, like not believable, like you see all that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. Can
And
anyone access this or no? This is like,
so I don't know, maybe some of the things that I was in are like under it, but it's a library that's open and it's awesome. I really wish I could just write interviews out of it.
I want to ask your opinion on this. This is like, I had mentioned this a couple days ago. And I was like, I want to know if this is me or if this feels genuine, like more true. I feel like the Oscars just recently happened.
Right.
I was like, I just feel like it used to be more of a cultural national event, almost like a Super Bowl of
Right.
sorts. And I'm like, am I sensing like something changing legitimately? Or is it that like me personally, am I just more
Yeah.
removed and less interested?
I get both parts of it because, I always assume that any movie that I bought a ticket to and watched blew up at the box office. And any movie that I didn't buy a ticket to and watched bombed at the box
Right.
office. I think there is part of that. Like, oh, the things that I engage with are all banging and awesome. And the
Yes.
things that I'm not engaging with don't matter.
Yeah,
or
like the
whatever.
Oscars, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Whatever.
so I think that that's part of it, but I think just holistically, like when you look at entertainment in general, like if you just look at like the last couple of years, the ways that movies have performed, everything is just kind of becoming more fragmented.
Yeah.
When you just look at the whole thing, and
there's massive movies, and then there's everything is like
Yeah.
kind of small. There's not like the in between, really. It feels like, right? Like,
yeah, and two, I think like the things that go straight to streaming. Like there's always just these
Yes.
things that are coming at you all of the time. So to have real cultural penetration anymore is just really hard. I think like the Super Bowl is kind of the last thing that we share as a culture. You know what I mean? I think everything else has become sort of fragmented. And
I wonder
niche.
what like Oscar viewership was like this year versus like 1995.
Yeah, right.
Like, I
That'd
wonder
be
if it's
interesting.
dramatically different. Would you look that up, like what they are those 2 years? Because I do wonder, like, is it dramatically different? Where there's like, because the other thing is like I hear about, and I guess it kind of makes sense, is that NBA viewership is way down.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me too. But like when you think about it, there's also in the times that we're living in where you can just catch the clips the next day. You're like, oh, well, the cream will rise to the top, and anything that's worth talking about will
Yeah.
reach me in some other form, whether it's like,
Right.
something that I
Highlights,
see on YouTube.
basically,
Yeah, the
yeah.
highlights are always delivered to you, and I think that's the same with sports.
So I'm not wrong about
No, I
this
mean-
to a degree. This thing says, how did the Oscars go from 43 million to 15 million viewers in just 8 years? Yeah, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's
That's a dramatic
That's not-
decrease.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not.
No, I think that I think that that's right. I'm interested. I'm reading kind of the things that they have.
Yeah, it's like this thing where you sense without like having looked up that number, you just feel like, I don't know, like almost like even though I work in entertainment, as you go like, yeah, people aren't like, oh my God, the Oscars.
Yeah,
Where
but
at
I think it's
certain-
maybe just about movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's not
right.
like that kind of breakthrough in a way that there used to be in the 90s, when
And they used to nominate less people for each category, which I think makes it feel like harder to get in that conversation. So it becomes more exclusive, in other words,
Yeah.
right? They're like, wasn't it like 3 nominees for like the big ones?
right.
And now they're like, oh, there's 10. And you're like, 10? Like,
And two, I would like to see, I mean, this is just like a dumb guy just talking out of his ass about like one of the most prestigious cultural institutions in all of entertainment. But I do think that Best Picture is just going to naturally lean towards the dramas more and more.
Always. Yeah.
So I would like to see in some way excellence awarded in the action category, or like maybe there is some ways that we can throw a little red meat out there with these sorts of things in a way that doesn't totally tank the prestige of the event. Or, I grew up as a comedy lover, and
Yeah.
now there are so few theatrical comedies that are released and
Yeah.
made. And
But they also never celebrated You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the really good ones. Like to
Yeah.
me, Kingpin is like a Best Picture nominee. You know what I mean? It's just, but
the things that we saw, Jim Carrey and like Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray,
yeah.
in comedies, like in just straight comedies, you go, that the movie doesn't exist without that person in it. It
Right.
just wouldn't work.
Right. So yeah. So I think maybe that, but you know, who knows?
Yeah. All right. So we have these things to show you. So Bryce Mitchell, UFC fighter, comes on the scene. You have these going through the speaker for us?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like his episode 1 of his podcast.
Coming out hot.
Comes out hot.
Hitler, hailing the Nazis. I really don't think that he was, because I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy based upon my own research, not my public education indoctrination.
His face is the
I
best.
really do think
I
before
feel for
Hitler
that
got on
co-host.
meth,
Yeah, he's like,
he
"This
was
is
the
how we're
guy I'd go
starting?"
fishing with. He fought for his country. He wanted to purify it by kicking the greedy Jews out that were destroying his country and turning them all into gays.
Hits
Turning
it
them
all.
all into
Gaying
gays.
out the kids.
Gaying out the kids.
They were queering out the women. They were queering out the dudes.
That guy's still
They
like,
were.
"God,
You know what her
shit."
first tranny surgery ever was? Happened to be in Germany before Hitler took over. You know the books that everybody makes fun of Hitler burning? You know what the books was? Queer books.
Okay, so he
Hitler
hits.
burned queer books.
He gets all the notes, right? He's like, and this is my show. This is episode 1. People go absolutely insane, rightfully. Dana White, because he's a UFC fighter, was like, this guy's a fucking moron.
Right.
Like, he comes out and he's like, he's the dumbest person we've ever had the pleasure of hiring.
Yeah.
And he's like, hopefully people will just watch him fight to see someone beat the
get his
shit
ass
out of
beat.
him.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I guess this guy's not gonna make content anymore.
Yeah.
'cause
Did
this
he
is
make
a-
an episode 2?
Well, he's started putting out other opinions, which is why I brought up the fact that he has, other things to say.
And everybody is just totally talking shit about me because of how stupid I am. Let me explain myself a little bit better, because this is what I meant by what I said. And I think nobody's going to disagree once I explain it. I stated that you can prove the earth don't rotate because you can take a helicopter, hover it at 20,000 feet for 24 hours and come back down in the same spot. Now everybody said, oh, a helicopter has inertia. I know what inertia is, dude. I'm not stupid. Let me tell you what I mean. Here is a picture of the circle of the earth, supposedly, if you believe in a globe. And the red circle is the helicopter.
like how he's
When the helicopter
introducing
ascends
Exhibit A,
above
you
the
know?
earth's
Like,
surface,
here's how I'm
it
not
now
stupid.
has a larger flight path around the earth. As in, when the earth, the inside circle, the black circle, does one full rotation, the red circle, or the flight of the helicopter, actually has to cover more distance.
But what I like is that when you see somebody who has multiple cool opinions. You know what I mean? So like that you're like, who the fuck is like, I'd like to go fishing with Hitler. It's the same guy who's like, hey man, if you take a chopper up in the air, look at this, it's not going to land in the same spot, or it is, and that means that the earth don't spin. You're like, I got it. And then he also goes into, I don't know, he's also not
What's your issue with seatbelts?
seatbelt advocate.
Seatbelts, I think it's just like you get to choose if you want to wear a seatbelt. The government doesn't, they don't wipe my ass for me, and they shouldn't be able to tell me if I want to wear a seatbelt. I personally don't like them because I think, what if you got to jump out of the car and roll, duck and roll? And nobody ever thinks
that's
about that.
his best point so far.
Good point.
So I don't personally wear a seatbelt, but I grew up, my mom never wore one.
Yeah.
I just don't
Can I ask
believe
you
in them.
this
And
though?
It's
'Cause
not
one of
up
the
to the
things
government to
that
decide
is
if
crazy about not wearing a seatbelt is the goddamn ding, and like the ding ding.
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
car tells you put that motherfucker. So like I have been like driven by like a car service
Right.
with some psycho fucking dude who's just up there, and you're like ding, and you're like, hey man, can we just stop the ding? And you see the guy like, fuck, I gotta put. So that means that guy drives around all day.
with it dinging.
Ding.
Like when the battery goes.
Yeah,
on
like
the
that
smoke
doesn't
detector.
bother you,
Yeah,
dude?
it doesn't drive you completely insane.
Some guy drove us on the road a few weeks ago, and we were all looking around like, is this really happening? Where he had, when you have the radio on and you don't find a station and it's just static?
Yeah.
Just that. Just drive. We were like, don't say anything. And we were just like, is he deaf? I was like, hey man. He's like, yeah. I'm like, no, you can hear. And then we just kept driving the whole time, like white noise. I was like, this is what you cruise around with? Just static in your ear all day? And he's just like, yeah, I'm fine. This is good. Soothes me to drive. And this guy, wherever he goes, ding, ding, every 20 seconds. And then he's just sitting there like, wish I was fishing with Hitler right now. Just fucking.
He's kind of a performance artist, though. You know, like this could almost be like a performance art.
It is a good lane for like WWE.
Like his heel. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If he was like trying to be like, make me the villain, I'll open up with Hitler would be cool to hang with. Like, and they're like, all right, like everyone's gonna know your name.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he's gonna double and triple down after that. But he's got lots of thoughts.
So many thoughts. The funny thing is, what I love when somebody actually has opinions, and then in his mind, he has great supporting arguments.
Right. Yeah. That's actually kind of
when
my
you've
favorite part.
done
about
your
it.
own research.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, yeah, that's how I came to this. And you're like, yeah, no, that's fucking good, man.
And I like even too his like, this is what I meant to say, but I'll be like, you don't need to clarify. Like I can tell you you meant that.
Yeah. That wasn't. It wasn't an accident.
There was no. Yeah.
The best part of all that though is that other dude who's like,
he frowned face.
He's like, this is episode 1, dude.
Frozen in
like
time.
you said, this was going to be fun when you got me to do this with you. Like you just dragged me into some shit that I don't want to be a part of now. Like I'm going to get so many fucking calls after this.
Listen, that's the plight of co-hosting on a podcast, you know.
Oh my God. What about a Chicago pizza question?
Sure.
Chicago's known for deep dish.
Yep.
It's like the Chicago style pizza. Yet you live most of the time in New York, which is known for a completely different style of pizza. Are you going to be a diplomat or are you going to choose a side?
No, here's what I'll say. Pizza is amazing in any form. I love Detroit style pizza. I love a pub pizza. I love the classic New York slice. It's always good. But I will say this, like sometimes people make fun of deep dish pizza or call it a tourist thing or think it's, people have strong opinions on deep dish pizza. But being away from Chicago, I crave it. Every time I go back, I always have to eat it because nobody else really does it. So I have to get, like a Lou Malnati's with sausage and green pepper. Like I really do love deep dish pizza and miss it quite a bit.
So I don't know this landscape, but like, is any place that serves pizza in Chicago kind of required to do deep dish? Like, do they all do it?
No. There's just like a handful
of places that do
it. And all have different origin stories and claim that they invented it.
Oh, right. It's like cheesesteak.
It's the cheesesteak thing through and through. But I do miss deep dish pizza and I'll always defend it. Like I could actually just really go for a slice right now, actually.
Shit, yeah. I wish we had pizza right now too. That'd be awesome. Pepperoni?
I like a sausage green pepper.
Oh, sausage green pepper.
Sausage green pepper.
Fuck yeah. You went to broadcast journalism school, that track.
Yep.
And a professor suggested you should be a weatherman.
Yeah.
Do you ever imagine? Here's the thing. Hearing that, I go, oh, he would have been great at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Well, you're a good presenter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you would have been, information, little wink and a smile.
Yeah.
Right? And they always have like little quips or jokes. You would have developed your sense of that. And then there'd probably be like a IG fan page of like, what's Sean's bomber jacket like today or whatever, right? For the weather guy, or like, I want to fuck the weather guy or something like that. You would have had some like super fans, some moms at home who were like, honey, get out the door. I'm about to watch the weather.
And I think being like a regional celebrity in like a smaller market would be awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So, but no, I always, thanks for saying all of that. Yeah, I think, weather is challenging. We always, in the final broadcast journalism class, it was one of those things where students would just rotate. So you'd be the anchor one day, you'd be the sports guy the next week, then you'd direct, then you'd be on camera, then you'd do weather, all of these different things. And people used to fold with weather because you have no teleprompter, you're off green screen, you're going through the clicker, and then everything's opposite your instincts. Like you feel like you're reaching this way, and then you look at the monitor and it's the other way. It takes a lot to figure out, and then you have no safety net. But I did kind of enjoy that space. But a lot of people would fold under that, like.
Do you actually know a lot about weather though, too?
No, and I'm not even like really that. I was never that great a science student either, so it was gonna be an uphill battle in order to get there.
But you liked the presentation aspect.
I
of it,
like the
right?
presentation aspect of it, and you just have to think about when you're a broadcast journalism major, there's a part of you that maybe thinks that you can be on TV, but it's not like majoring in accounting where it's like you graduate, you interview with the top 4, then you get a job. And, it's not a normal career that way. There's no natural foot in. So I was like, well, that's a way in. You know what I mean? So that was a thought that I had for a little bit, but thankfully I didn't pursue it too hard. But maybe I should, like I'm just thinking about being like a regional celeb in a mid or small market, would be sick.
So
be
cool.
so sick.
Because I lived in LA 20 years, and that's not like a small market, but all the local news people are like
Beloved.
They're beloved there. Yeah.
Exactly.
I remember Dallas Raines. What's that fucking guy's name? Dallas Raines.
That's made for local
That's
news.
made for there. Look at that smile, bro.
Oh, that is.
And they always have like a lot of them, like appearance is obviously a big thing. He's also in the LA market, but it's like, the hair, the veneers, the tan. I mean,
I know it's a bygone era. He's
Yeah.
kind of like the last of a dying breed, but that's an important subculture of broadcasting.
That's so wild. I think that's him like 40 years ago in the
headshot.
Yeah, the signed one. I think that's him.
Incredible. Probably came out to try to be an actor.
Always.
Yes.
Same with porn. Like everybody goes like, I'm here to act, and then someone's like, hey, what do you think of $300 to show your asshole? And they're like, oh, okay. And they're like, I kind of fell into this. You're like, yeah, I know. I've watched that porn doc on Netflix, and they have this fucking it's so fucked up. But they're like, hey, they're like, what are you getting paid today? And this girl's like, I don't know, like it was like $500, and then the guy's like, and then she goes, but they offered me another $100 for a cream pie, like to finish inside of
Oh.
me. But then she goes,
A la
I gotta
carte
buy
pricing.
the Plan B pill, which is 40. It was 40 at the time, and she goes, but that's $60 in my pocket. I'm like, yeah, that's not a lot to say come inside of me, like to be like, yeah, but you got $60 more.
$60 is $60.
But for sure, local weather is like a byproduct of
Failed auditions.
I mean,
A rough pilot season.
I think anything you end up doing with a camera anywhere is like I was trying to act.
Yeah.
Right? Like anything. Like everybody was like I was trying to act, and then I ended up doing this.
weather.
Yeah. Now I'm just telling you, it's fucking breezy today. Yeah. But I do think it's kind of cool. The weather track is kind of cool.
And like Letterman started it as a weatherman too.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I forget that. I also loved. This is like I mean, not that it doesn't exist anymore. Is that him? Oh,
Yeah,
that
look
it?
at that. And
Wow.
I think he got fired. This is maybe lore lost in
sure.
time because he congratulated a tropical storm on being upgraded to a hurricane. It's like a
That's
very Letterman
so
joke,
Funny. That is so funny.
We're under a flash flood warning, but all of that seems of little importance once you take a look at the cloud cover photograph made earlier of the United States today, and I think you'll see that once again we've fallen to the prey of political dirty dealings. And right now you can see what I'm talking about. The higher-ups have removed the border between Indiana and Ohio, making it one giant state. Personally, I'm against it.
And they're laughing
yeah,
on
yeah.
I
set.
don't know what to do about it.
I mean, that's awesome.
That's so awesome.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also that is, to me, speaks to also the audience at home where there's people dying laughing at that.
Right.
And then there's people being like, the fuck's this guy doing? Like they're totally confused. I'm like, why is he talking about a border? Like, did they really? Like questioning that it's real,
Yeah.
Like that's for sure happening.
And even his writing is just kind of in that style, and his irreverence, towards being he's probably bitter about doing
Oh,
the weather,
yeah.
and then that's coming out in
Yeah.
his presentation, he's the best.
He is the best, dude. That's so fucking funny. I also miss I have, I guess it's a nostalgia thing, what the national news guys were when I was growing up. Like it was Peter Jennings, Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw.
Mm-hmm.
And like I really
Miss those guys.
I loved those guys.
Yeah.
I loved like their presentation of it was really prompter, just was like comforting to me.
Classic newsman.
Classic newsman. I liked it. We
Me
still
too.
have, I guess,
A little bit, yeah,
it's
but
the
not like
same.
that. Not like that.
There's also, it's like, is there something to be said about just old white guys making you feel like everything's okay? You know, they don't hire them anymore. Poor guys.
And the news isn't a let you know everything's okay kind of business anymore either.
It's totally people
they've
don't
flipped it.
understand that. Like, you want a Rogue? You want
Sure,
nicotine?
yeah.
Fuck yeah. That I've mentioned it, that like I remember the transition from news is just something that's read, where they're like, here's what's happening in Somalia today, and you're like, okay, to it was what I remember specifically is CNN. The first time I was like, I remember like going through it, and it was Anderson Cooper, but he's like ageless or something, so it might have been 50 years ago, but it was Anderson Cooper, and then he said something that was happening, and he was like, he like commented on it, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is weird. And he was like, yeah, it's not so. I personally like think that's a bad. And I'm like, why is he fucking doing this?
Yeah, right.
But then you realize that he was doing it because the cult, like, he wasn't like the only one doing it, but it was slowly happening. Like, Fox was starting to do it, where it was like characters and like, like, oh, this is the person who's going to say what I want them to say,
Right.
And then that'll make me feel good because they're sharing the opinion. But those guys were just like, here's the thing.
Yeah. So, but that's, I think, like when, sort of like the classically trained school versus, in a lot of ways, entertainment is just what we want reflected back at us. You know what I mean? And then at some point, like somebody was like rolling through and being like, well, this is, what holds our audience, like this is the watch time. They're just like looking at the
That's
data of it
definitely.
and then just cranking the other side.
And what happened too was that when Fox did it, they were doing it first, where they were like, they're gonna look this way, they're gonna take this angle, and their numbers went through the roof.
Right.
And so everybody else was like, like, we gotta do the opposite, like do something to get the other people, because they're killing us.
Do you think, this is maybe a fun thought exercise, but as the market swings, the pendulum swings in the other direction, do you think there's a market opportunity for a classic newsman to like take over in these times? Or is that just dead?
I don't know. I keep saying this about things, that like everything seems cyclical, but it feels like, in my lifetime, nothing's ever been more split, where people are just so adamantly against the others. And like what they need is someone to go like, hey, like, how about I'll just tell you,
Calming Brokaw
I'll tell
hand,
you
a
what's,
steady hand.
I'll just tell you what's happening. And they're like, yeah, fucking tell me what's happening. And like that person, it feels like there would be a market for them,
Yeah,
like,
I'm just looking at
yeah,
the white space in the market there,
There's,
and I'm like wondering.
but then like I go, oh, I thought that already wasn't like PBS doing that. And then I don't know, when I said that last time, somebody was like, no, fucking PBS is not doing that. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. Like you can't, everybody gets upset about. It's so funny because if you say something that like certain groups agree with, immediately you're bombarded with like, you fucking get it, smart guy. You're like, oh, okay. And then the second you say the thing that they don't, it's just vitriol. Like it's just so much hatred of like, fucking idiot. And you're like, okay. So, I mean, I guess that shows you just can't look for validation in comments.
No,
but,
that's a bad idea.
It's a bad
just
idea.
in general.
But it is like, it's still, I feel like the split could not be wider and stronger.
And just, always growing more intense.
Right? And it I don't know if it's like a old guy thing, but it doesn't, to my memory, I don't feel like it was like that.
No, I mean, maybe this is just me being an old guy, but sometimes you just feel like the 90s was like the last vestige of that, and then it just started to tip, yeah.
Yeah. And it's all because of 9/11. I don't know what it's from. I don't know. That was a bad day. Yeah, it didn't really happen. It was a controlled demolition. I don't know. Somebody's real happy I said that though.
Yeah.
They're like, fucking, he finally gets
said it. Yeah,
he gets it. He gets it. Oh, really? Do buildings just fall like that? Really? It's George Bush and his friends. They went in there the night before and they set dynamite inside and it just fucking fell.
Look, the signs were there all along.
They were always there. The planes are just a little thing on the side just to get you distracted. Anyway, We're gonna make the news on this one. We hit a lot of cool topics.
Fingers crossed.
It's really gonna help. It's gonna help sauce sales for sure. And they're like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
are you
thanks,
talking-"
Tommy. Yeah. Always a pleasure, dog.
Hey, look, in your defense, you didn't do anything wrong. It was all our side.
Yeah, I was just the guy with the frowning face on the other side of the table.
But I've heard from other people before, you have to say something in the moment. Otherwise, people get mad at you for not having. So this might be a good soundbite for you to be like, I just want to say some of the things you've shown me or said. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So-
like I'll get in a sanctimonious way.
Well, yeah, just so that like people go, but because the big criticism will be that like things were played for you and things were said and you didn't speak up in the moment. You know, you should have spoken up in the moment.
Just live and learn, you know. I was just going with the flow here.
Yeah, that's
with
not
you.
a thing to go
I was
with the
just
flow.
trusting you, Tom, and maybe that was my problem. I should never have trusted you, Tom. But I should know better at this point.
That is actually a really good soundbite. Is that don't trust Tom?
Don't trust Tom.
I love that I did your show and that I've gotten to be friends with you. I couldn't be happier for your success.
Thank you, Doug.
I do think you are. I've said it before. I think you are the best interviewer on the planet doing this today. You really are the Charlie Rose without peeing on some or whatever he did, and I think I really do think you're the best. I think
you,
you're the
Tommy.
best. I'm happy for you. I know you're extremely wealthy now, and I expect incredible holiday gifts when that season comes. I would also like to visit your estate when you're done.
You're
acquiring
invited.
it.
Always.
Great.
Always. Open door policy for you and Christina.
Where would you reside if you were picking your like? This is where I want. Would it be? Would you stay?
I
in
think
New
about
York?
it sometimes.
Do you want out of the big city and a more peaceful setting?
Well, there's you know, I'm a city rat by nature, I think.
Yeah.
You know, and will be for the foreseeable future. And eventually someday I'd like to get back in Chicago. I'd
You
like to
would?
die
Like
in
to go
Chicago.
home?
Yeah.
Really?
Like I don't want to die in New York. I don't want to die in LA. Like I'd rather die in I'd like to die in Chicago. So I want to get back there eventually, but sometimes when I do just let the daydream go, you know, I was like,
That's such a good, by the way to summarize it. Where do you want to die? I never
Yeah.
hear people say, "Where would you like to die?"
that's how I think about it because I have no exit strategy at the moment, and I have fallen in love with New York. When I first moved to New York, I treated it like prison. I was like, I'm doing 2 summers and I'm doing 2 winters and I'm getting the fuck out of here. But
How long's it been now?
like 14 years, I think.
Wow.
Or 13 years. I don't know. Something like that. Lived there longer than I have lived anywhere else. And now I'm in love with it. And it's hard to adjust when you go to another city after you're like used to the
Yeah.
pace and style and everything of New York. So I love New York. I have no immediate plans to leave. Spend a ton of time in LA. But, you know, obviously because of unfortunate events, the landscape there, you know, like my dream was always like, sometimes I'll stay at this place called the Malibu Beach Inn. Over
exactly
there, like,
where that is.
yeah, like by that Nobu over
That
there.
place is rad.
It's so great. It's so great. I love that place, and it's kind of just like a chill zen like sanctuary for me.
Yeah.
Like if I'm working, I've got like this weekend off, like I'd book there, and I would take these long walks up north, and you just see those like crazy estates
Yeah.
that are on the beach there. And when I look at those, I'd be like, that would be so sick, you know, to just like
Sure.
you have the beach and that beach access, but then we'll also have these sick pools, and you know, like those houses are so sick. And then you're just by that zen ocean water, and you can just fall asleep with the windows cracked and just hearing
Something
the
different
waves all
about
night.
the
There's
ocean.
something different about it, and it's so calming to me that I was like, you know, if things work out in just the right way, this would be amazing.
All right. That's
So
a
I've
great
thought about
answer.
it a little bit.
So you can now take your newfound extraordinary wealth and buy a house in Malibu.
Yeah, right.
So you know where to
Buy
find
the
them.
dip. Buy
Yeah.
the dip. Yeah.
Fucking dude, Malibu is, I mean, even with all of its chaos, like you get used to hearing about, you know, obviously fires is a big thing.
Yeah,
and
right.
mudslides and everything. It's still there's nothing.
the best,
It's
yeah.
the best. Malibu's the best. Malibu Beach Inn. You got a free plug.
There you go.
Give us a couple free nights. Soho Beach House. What is that called? Yeah, little
Yeah, they have that club over there.
That club's over there. Nobu's there.
All you need. They used to have this like fried chicken joint across the street from Nobu, and I always thought that would be like fun to, because that's a great name, Malibu Fried Chicken. I was like,
What's better than fried chicken too?
It's the best. Do Nobu on Saturday, fried chicken on Sunday.
Hey, can we get some fried chicken tonight?
Let's go.
Hell yeah.
Pizza.
Let's do fried chicken, dude. Fried chicken is the shit. It's so good for you, and it's so good to eat. What do you watch? That's the other thing I want to know. Because you have good taste. What are you watching? Are you watching any shows or movies right now?
Yeah, I'm watching. Well, I watched every Oscar nominee, every
You
adapted.
did watch everyone?
Yeah, because I was doing all these interviews, so I watched every single one.
What was your? Did you love one the most?
Yeah, I mean, Anora was probably my favorite film of the year,
Wow.
and it cleaned up. But I also really loved The Substance, and I love
Yeah.
Corley. I was kind of rooting for her for director, and I was rooting for Demi and Best Actress. You know, like when I was at the event, and
Yeah.
kind of just thinking about.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
You're like, yeah.
So I did love those movies a lot. I'm happy that The White Lotus is back. That's one of my favorite shows. I
Yep.
love that show. Severance, banging right now. Love that show.
Never seen it. Everybody, it's one of those
That's
things.
all right. If you're not, you don't need to jump on. You know.
No, I feel like I'm such an idiot. Is that I always, whatever's like the hottest show, if I didn't already start it, I always go
I
like,
get that.
I go, I'll watch it later. And
I was
just
late
put
as
it up.
Game of Thrones is already done before I even started it.
I started it fucking 2023.
Hell yeah, you and me both, dog.
I watched the season and a half though. I get too distracted. I think I have a
A
little
lot of
attention
characters, a lot of
deficit
different
disorder.
spots. Yeah, yeah.
My favorite was that Breaking Bad was like a cultural phenomena, and I kept being like, "Oh, fuck off," you know. And
Yeah.
then,
You watch it, you're like, this is the best show ever.
well, here's the thing: I started the show as the last season was beginning to air, whatever year that was, like 2015 or
Yeah.
something. So I started like, I'll watch this show. So I got to watch the entire series in like 2 weeks of like, this is the fucking best thing I've ever seen. So I always remind myself that, what was it, 13? So it's 13, it was even earlier. It was, that ride of being able to go through it without having to wait
without it, yeah,
was incredible.
best.
Yeah, it was incredible. But I do keep hearing that Severance is amazing.
it is.
It's really
It
good.
is. Yeah. Shout out to Adam Scott. Shout out to Ben Stiller.
Okay. Well, guys, make a note that in 2029 I will watch Severance. Please, don't let me forget. Thank you, Sean.
You're the best, dude.
You're the best. Thank you for doing this. I'm sorry if I did something that will affect your brand in some way.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Yes. I'll go down with you. You have lots of studio space here. You know, I could always pop up a show here.
Anytime.
Okay, deal.
Yeah, we will make. You know what? We'll get rid of people for you. I would love to tell somebody that they lost their job today because you're here.
And I'd love to break the news with you.
Oh, dude. Also, that would be the best IG Reel TikTok video ever. Of like, hey, sit down and actually stand up because you got to get the fuck out of here.
yeah.
Sean's here now. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bert and Tom, Tom and Bert. One goes topless while the other wears a shirt. Tom tells stories and Bert's the machine. There's not a chance in hell that they'll keep it clean. Here's what we call 2 bears, 1 cave.